I'm going to kick off by just laying the context, really. There's been a lot of challenge, if you like, around online learning, and everyone got excited about it. And then we suddenly kind of got used to it. So everybody's Zooming and everybody's teaming and everything. And my concern, I suppose, is that we'll hit a plateau and that will be okay. And I think there are a lot of people out there who want to kind of supercharge what they're doing and really take it to another level. What I'll do is I'll quickly introduce each one of you, and then as time goes by, you'll be able to feed more in about what you do and who you are. So first of all, because you've come so far, Michael, I will introduce Michael. Michael Boss. I met Michael in Shanghai. We were working on an international project together, linking schools together from America, China, and Australia. And then this kind of crazy time hit where we just couldn't do it for obvious reasons. But Michael, I know that you've been working a lot on, and I think it's NEAS, isn't it? The NEAS?
That's right.
Yeah. So the Australian kind of quality assurance approach to online learning. So I'm going to pick your brains about that a little bit.
Sure.
We've got Bethany Fleming. She's come second furthest, although she's been back a while. She was in Spain teaching and also in China. Degree from the mighty Durham University in Chinese and Spanish. Beth, is that right?
Yeah.
And Beth was a kind of shining star teaching face-to-face in China, but actually has been teaching online for about 5 years. So it's kind of something that's very, very natural and very normal for her. So I'll be picking out with you, Beth, some of the tips and tricks of how you kind of engage through the camera and you know, that kind of stuff. Really, how do you keep those Chinese kids busy, because they're a handful. Tim. Hi, Tim.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Tim. Tim is a British Council ambassador and also eTwinning ambassador. And I was particularly taken by what Tim does, which is he teaches chess.
Yeah.
And then more recently, chess online, and also teaches online for English First as well. So again, very comfortable in the online skin. And last, but absolutely by no means least at all, the powerhouse Jia Wang. You are an inspiration. I've met you at the Bet Show, and out of the hundreds of stalls and stands there, I was really taken by your unique approach to STEM, the Robobrain Academy, and the differences between your kind of system and some of the others that are out there. And in particular, I know when we talked, you changed your approach so that you'd had to go online. Essentially, you went online, or not had to go online, I'm sure it's part of the plan, but perhaps accelerated a little bit quicker than you might have first thought. So I'll be sort of picking out a few areas there in terms of online courses and how you found that, and you know, because there's one thing putting it on and there's another thing making sure it works. And I know you've been working very hard at that. So that's where we're at. And I suppose my first question is to Michael, to sort of provide an umbrella. Can you give us a little insight into the Australian approach to this quality assurance, please?
Yeah, certainly. So, you know, it's interesting because I hate to use the word, but schools have pivoted resources, you know, quite a lot during this time. And there's been some fast pivots. And during this time, you know, as NEAS has really looked at and supported schools, they've tried to look at maintaining quality through this time. And so there's generally four guiding principles and that NEAS have used to guide what a good quality online course is. The first one is making sure that the online environment is designed to support a positive and engaging user experience. The second one is that the learning and assessment strategies are appropriate to online delivery. The third one is learning resources and technology support and facilitate learning. And then the fourth one is courses are supported by an integrated reporting system. Now, each of those four quality principles has a number of underlying points and principles and things that we look at to ensure that those 4 guiding and umbrella principles are met, to ensure, I guess, a long-lasting online course. We feel that we're going to see some of the online courses drift away because people move very quickly into this space. But we do have some guiding frameworks and principles to make those more robust and to make sure that there's some longevity there.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think that for me just provides a framework perhaps to talk within. And going to Jaja, can you just explain, perhaps a little bit about your product? Because it's a product essentially, but a fantastic product, and then a little bit about how you're developing that with the online.
Okay, I think I'll step back about the background of Robobrain, why it's being set up, and how we changed the direction in the middle of, in mid-March. So basically, it all started when we were looking for coding and robotics courses on the market. And we couldn't find anything that I feel I would like to send my children to, because I feel that for young generation, it's absolutely important that they need to learn coding, or at least computational thinking. But this is somehow missed out in most of the coding schools out there, because the teachers just tell them how to copy their code by dragging from left window to the right window, which doesn't help us. So we basically set up a curriculum that is designed in a way that is clear and flexible for schools and teachers to use. And it's planned in such a way that is connected to the national curriculum. And we also feel that it's very important to go into the fundamentals of coding, which is helping children to solve problems. Because after all, with different syntax, it's very important about the problem solving. So that's how we came about with this curriculum. I think luckily at the curriculum R&D stage, that we have put the curriculum in different stages, different problems. So there are easy, medium, and difficult problems. And that helped us when we converted all the in-classroom lessons online, because that helped us to adapt a different range of abilities through the virtual lesson. That really helped. And another thing is that we collect feedbacks. I know Rob knows that we are using a bit of artificial intelligence to help now teachers to deliver class. We believe that human and machine intelligence works the best, and there is no way machine can replace human. So we're using artificial intelligence to help our teacher to deliver the lesson, and that helps.
Help to create it, because one thing that I've known from talking to you is how connected you are with your own children, and you often mention the word children and young people. So, I know that whilst they say it's a product, actually there's a whole philosophy and vision around what you do, and something that we both talked about before is that connection that you get through the live experience with people. Obviously we're in Zooms, but how does your approach kind of help to do both? Because you mentioned AI and human. How does that work?
Yeah, so originally every lesson is in class, because for those abstract concepts, it's very difficult for a 6-year-old to understand what a variable is, what arrays are. So we use different procs in the classroom to help the children to understand it. However, when it happens, we have to get on with it. So what we have done is that we used different medias like videos, like animations, and also the teacher is, we always tell the teachers that they have to see the children's face when they are delivering the lesson.
I see, yeah.
So although we are not seeing them with the physical movement, everything, but we see their face. When they understand it, they're following you. I'm sure all of you would agree with me that that's one of the captures you absolutely want from children. So we tell the parents that it's a must that they have to open their video, and then we can see their feedback through their facial expression, and that helps a lot.
So it's kind of getting used to it, and again that human thing that we want to be creating. Tim, I joked before we came on I don't know whether the backroom stuff was kind of streaming out or not, but I was saying that, you know, you're like a guy who connects people, and, you know, you're obviously a very human. So what have you been doing with your students to create more of that sort of connectivity between people?
Well, put it this way. I'll give you an example. I set up a synchronous assembly between my school in Manchester and it was called the number 72 in Moscow, and it was just the most amazing experience in terms of the kids were singing hymns to each other, and they were asking each other questions, and you know, the teachers were interacting, and it was just the most amazing celebration of kind of internationalism. And the best thing was the signal was just hanging by a thread. And at the end of it all, I remember walking out, and there were loads of teachers in the back watching. I remember walking out, and the head came to me. He said, "Welcome, Tim," and sorry, he said, "Well done, Tim." Tapped me on the back, and they went, "Oh," and because my back was I was wringing wet with just stress and worry and anxiety, but what a great experience. And
absolutely,
my
you have to be pretty bold to do that. No, you have to be pretty bold to do that. And I think again, the thing that the core of what you guys do is always focusing on kind of empathy and being, you know, what are those other people thinking or feeling, rather than just what have I got to deliver, because there can be a danger of sort of going back to, I must just deliver. So I suppose that leads me segueing on to Beth. Now, Beth told me yesterday, she said, "Oh, it's just recorded." I said, "Yeah, it's recorded, it's live recorded, so it's kind of like a bit of both." And I hope you don't mind me saying, you said, "Oh, I'm a little nervous now." But you're not nervous now, are you? Not nervous now, are you?
I'm all right. Now I've met everyone else.
To be honest, you have done some crazy stuff, you know, living in China, living in Spain, high pressure stuff, and you teach online a lot of the time, synchronously. So just tell us a little bit about how you move from just delivering stuff through a lens to being more interactive, shall we say?
Well, yeah, like for some people, you might be teaching them online having already met them, like for some students, and for some students you meet them through the screen for the first time and you never actually physically meet them. It's quite daunting, like getting to know someone through a screen. So what I always make sure I do is just get to know my students like as I would in person. So I'll just ask them, like, what have they been doing today? Or what did they do at the weekend? Or if they mention that they're going on holiday or they've been baking or their pet dog barks in the background. And I'm like, who's that? What's he called or she? Like, just get to know them. Just show them that you're human. Because it can be really easy for them to forget that you're actually a person.
Sure. It reminds me a little bit of when I used to, you know, I occasionally did a classroom. I was a PE teacher, but when I occasionally did a classroom lesson, and I would find that, you know, when I'm in the classroom, I almost felt like I had to be this perfect classroom teacher to start with, and like if I made mistakes or if things kind of went wrong, it was a problem. And I've seen a bit of that with the Zoom thing, is that people feel like they have to deliver these kind of perfect PowerPoint presentations with a little face in the corner and, you know, go through methodically. But I think what you're also, you know, you're getting across here is how important it is for your personality to shine through. Yeah. And Michael, again, you come from a very strategic position. What I didn't mention was that you are head of international for Moreton Bay College, and in Australia. And what kind of struck me was how important it's gonna be for that whole international thing to be teaching online. We've talked about the quality standards, but what are your experiences so far of people's, you know, teachers adjusting, and can you give any kind of a couple of tips for them, because people are finding it hard to adjust, and then there aren't that many people who are doing synchronous, you know, face-to-face lessons through the lens, you know.
Yeah, there has been a lot of movement towards online, and we've got a number of students in a number of schools that are actually still based overseas. You know, I work at one school, but I have kind of exposure and access to a lot of different schools through my role at NIAS. So I hear is a lot of different stories from a lot of different schools and what they're doing in these spaces. So what's really interesting is the amount of schools that are actually delivering both online and face-to-face. In Australia, we've moved probably a little bit further in some of our states where our students are back at school mostly in most states. But some people who are stranded overseas, we've had to sort of work out new combinations of what to do. And I think the learnings when we were fully online have been really nice to be able to apply to the combined environment where it's face-to-face and online. So those are some of the things that I'm hearing across schools. The tips, I think, be prepared, but don't be over-prepared. One of the things I'm finding with kids and some of the things that we're getting from kids is that they're actually having some technology issues in connecting or seeing things, and often teachers would over-prepare. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't have enough resources, and certainly enough resources to challenge in different ways. Finishers, your students that are struggling. I think having the right amount of preparation, but not too much. And lots of teachers were saying, certainly through the online time, that they prepared way too much, and most of the students couldn't get through that material. So I think doing a lot of face-to-face is good. And in terms of doing some face-to-face and then setting some tasks aside for students to then do in their own time and then come back to those face-to-face sessions. Just some other feedback that I've heard, a comparison between the state and private systems. So there's definitely different models out there. And in Australia, I don't know if we call them state public and we call private where you pay for your education. So our public and private. So our public schools, our state-run schools, they weren't fully engaged with students. What they would do is mostly they would spend a bit of time face-to-face, and then they would set the students off on tasks. So that was mostly the state model. The private model was mostly full-time face-to-face. And what the feedback from what I've heard in both of those two models is that the full-time face-to-face was more successful than the model of partial face-to-face and setting them off with tasks. So there's something to be said for that continuous engagement with the students and how they interact. So even though they might struggle with the technology, giving them the tools, maybe helping them through that process is certainly a few tips that I would share.
It's very interesting you're saying that, Michael, because in Robobrain, what we have done is that we have activities that's for individual student only or group exercise, because one of the principles we have is for collaboration and communication. So after shifting everything online, what we've done is that we open up different breakout rooms for children with similar ability to go in there. But it's not that they are doing it offline. The teachers drop it in and out of each breakout room to look at how they are doing. And we see a lot of benefit from that, because the children absolutely enjoying talking to their friend about how to find a solution for this question. And I guess they also feel lonely because they don't get to see their friends on a daily basis with a physical contact. So that's what we have adopted, and we saw it working very well on that.
Thank you. And I've got a question here for Tim and Beth. You can fight it out for this one, just work together on this one. It's really about what are these schools going to look like in the future? And we can get caught up with very philosophical, sort of visionary things about, the importance of blended learning. But actually, tangibly, what do you think schools are going to need to do?
I can see, I had to think about this, I had a good think about it. And I thought, well, I can see kind of virtual kind of multinational schools where you're bringing learners and experts together. And where that's not possible, say in perhaps the developing countries or different time zones, I think the asynchronous dimension is really exciting. And I think I'll be finishing in a minute. Beth, don't worry. I think I think it's exciting where teachers can share sort of good professional practice with colleagues, both synchronously and asynchronously, on an international scale. Now, I mean, I heard this. I went to last year. I went to the second European Education Summit, and they were talking about the importance of getting professionals from different parts of the world sharing ideas. Sorry, Beth, go on.
No, I hadn't thought about it as you have.
Well, let me frame it for you, Beth. You're going to go in next, well, probably a couple of weeks' time, maybe a week or two. Yeah. What are you expecting, and what you're going to go in with knowledge that a lot of people don't have? What would you expect to see? What would you want to see from that school to really supercharge learning?
As Tim mentioned, like that asynchronous kind of blended learning aspect, trying to get the best of both worlds. Obviously, Michael mentioned that at the moment, because that's what we're used to traditionally, face-to-face learning is definitely more effective still. Yeah, but if we can keep improving this online experience and find the best of both worlds to be able to like blend them well, then some kind of blended learning approach for the future would be amazing. But yeah, I love what Tim said about how it could be multinational and you could collaborate across continents and things. Obviously, with time zones and things, it might be a problem. But yeah, like it's very exciting, actually.
I just think at the moment, it's strange to actually say this as a teacher, but I think the curriculum needs to will take a step back. And I think it's more this online experience, this kind of engaging, and this the enjoyment of the online experience, or even remote teaching for pupils, is the most important aspect. And I think the curriculum's going to take anyway. That's what I think.
And like task-based learning, definitely. I think there'll be a lot more of it in the future.
Yeah. Can you just define what you mean by that, Beth?
So like instead of giving students information and having them digest it and learn that way, like rote learning, giving them a task like with very little teaching, and then having them learn themselves through their own research, collaboration with groups, picking up the information they need through tasks like that. Sure. Will be much more accessible.
Independent, really try and nurture that kind of independent learning as well. Sending them out, but using the online to be a catalyst for that. Interesting. And Jaja and Michael, again, you can kind of punch it out for this one. It's a strategic one. You're both parents as well, and I'm really interested to know whether you think that the young people will get it quicker than the adults, or will the adults get this quicker than? Because I'll tell you what spawned this question. Everyone's, young people, technology, all into it. But I saw some sixth forms struggling with Zoom, and actually my son is like, Zoom, God, they use Discord, and isn't it just a different kind of technology? What's going on in that kind of scenario? How do you see that?
Well, Jojo, do you mind if I start, or would you like to?
Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. So, as a parent and somebody who's worked in education for a long time, I can say that in some areas, kids are better at technology, but in other areas, they're not. So, a lot of the simple things like how do I connect to my OneNote? We, as at my school, some of our teachers took snapshots and sent through the correspondence between them and their students, trying to access files. So what's really interesting is they struggled with some of that basic kind of interfacing with technology. My own kids as well. At times I needed to help them with some of the simple technology stuff. However, in other areas, I was a bit of a Luddite in some areas, and they needed some things. So I do think there can be some mutual learning. I think kids are definitely, adept at, adjusting to those changes quite quickly. They certainly embrace it very quickly too. Not saying that we don't, but that they haven't known anything else. They've grown up with technology their whole lives. I started off with a VIC-20 and then a Commodore 60, and then we went from there. So look, I've seen a whole stack of changes with technology, even landlines to mobiles, and then to smartphones. So kids are adept at, and they're very good at the current technology they have. And I think can improve, I guess, on what we have as well. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do, the changes that they can make, the things that they can develop. Already, my daughter was showing me something the other day. She created this fantastic video, which I could have used in my marketing overseas, and it up in about 5 minutes. So I think I might be putting her on the payroll.
Michael, I agree with you. Absolutely. I think kids on, picking up new technology, they probably is in a way faster comparing to a lot of us as adults, because we've seen a lot more through our life. I want to add one thing is that I think for students and teachers, they are using the technology from different aspects. The students are using the technology to learn, and therefore, it's the same technology, but the view is different. And from teachers' point of view, I think my teachers, they are struggling with, sometimes when they're struggling with technology, it's about how we could deliver the lesson in the best way. And for students, they're recipient, so they could play around with it to get on board quicker. But I think it's very different aspects in terms of talking about using the same technology, but teachers or students.
Sure. And something that I've wanted to almost come back to is this sort of connectivity, this in-person, face-to-face. I've got to be honest, it sort of starts to seep into school inspections and that kind of stuff, because suddenly you're going to have office inspectors who are not necessarily fully aware of what is a great quality lesson, what the balance between asynchronous and synchronous should be. And what we do know is that through the camera you lose sound. That's one thing. You lose a sense of color and realism because it's pixels, not reality. The sound, there's a tiny little bit of latency, and all these things the brain is having to get used to. So what should we be doing in that respect?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we are missing a lot when it's online. Body language, like you only ever see head and shoulders, whereas obviously face to face you've got an entire body of language. Eye contact as well, like students, when you're looking at a student, there's an instant kind of connection there, or like, I need to focus now because the teacher's looking at me. Whereas when you're teaching online, it's quite easy to look at the student's face, or for them to look at your face, like on the screen, as opposed to looking into the camera, which kind of makes them think that you're looking at them. But yeah, I try and focus on facial expressions as well, just to give instant feedback. If a student says something and I'm listening and they've said something that's not quite right, or they could say it a bit better, I give them a face like, or like, really?
So do you find you have to overemphasize that a little bit?
Oh yeah. Much more than
a bit of drama.
And if you do something well, especially with the younger students, you really want to be like, like be over enthusiastic with them, because it is harder to get that across online.
Because I've seen some really strong teachers with really strong personalities, but they get online and it's kind of like, they become very dull. Jaja, you obviously you're looking at delivering online courses, or you are already delivering online courses. This is a little bit for Michael as well. Recruitment, again, it comes back to that sort of quality issue. But how do you know, and who you're looking for? What's the kind of person you're looking for to help deliver your courses?
I take this first, Michael. So I think for us, when we shifted from in-classroom to online, we've noticed that animation is a key, because especially now children starting from 5 years old, so we need someone with a character that can really draw the children into the lesson. So we are looking at someone with energy, with a personality that they can connect with the children even without in a classroom setting. And because we have more material prepared for the online sessions compared to the classroom sessions, in a way, a qualification in computer science is not as looked into as much as their personality and their teaching style. So we did shift when we look at different online tutors, because we feel that this is very important. And that's absolutely key, because the children send teachers, private messages like, I really like your lessons, because they're happy and they like the teacher's style, and that's very important.
Sure, sure. And Michael, obviously, there's a huge issue for you with recruitment of quality teachers to retain students and all the rest of it,
That's right. The thing that I'd probably only add, I think Jar Jar covered that really, really well. You need somebody with a great screen presence.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would add is that someone with with technology skills. I think the ability to hit the ground running. When we originally moved across to asynchronous delivery and online delivery, we had to spend a lot of time training our teachers to make sure we're able to do that. So I think if I'm looking for staff at the moment, I want them to be able to have some of those skills. Yes, we'll provide some training, but I want them to have at least a basic level of skill and understanding of the environments that they're going to be operating in. Given that we're all operating in this environment now, I think most people will have fairly good skills in that space, but being able to demonstrate that and through a Zoom interview or something like that might be the first way to go.
Can I just say, it appears to me that across, again, I'm talking about this course, this conference I went to, certainly across the European member states, teachers, and this is really listening to what you said, Jaja, teachers absolutely hate teaching STEM. They cannot stand it. And the chasm between teachers and pupils is opening, and it's increasing. And from what I can gather, a lot of teachers are crying out for training of STEM and of all this, because the kids are very often from my own experience, are one step ahead, and it's keeping up with them, really. That's just wanted to say that.
Sure. And just to wrap up, really, first of all, just feel free to signpost for people to look online for anything particular that you think is good. Do look at Robobrain Academy. Really, really unique, actually. It's worth a look. If I could just wrap up by asking you guys to give maybe putting you on the spot here, but your top tip, your top bit of advice for that synchronous or asynchronous learning. What if you had 10 seconds to give that piece of advice to somebody before they went off into the online learning teaching wilderness, what would it be? Just to wrap up, from my perspective, I'm going to cheat, and there are two. One is that I think we need to learn from YouTube influencers because they are continually interacting that, and young people are engaged with that. And it's like, what are they doing that engages people? Is it the pace? Is it the way it's edited? Is it? And the second one I think is just personality. People have got to be able to relax and enjoy it, so that it's less of a headache. Those would be my two takeaways. Anyway, who's up for that one to close us down?
I'll
Tim, go for it.
No, go on, Michael. I've not heard from you for a while. Go on.
Look, I was just going to say maintaining connection. I think, Rob, you talking about YouTube influencers, that maintaining that connection in some engages kids, that engages their audience. How do you do that? How do you get that in the beginning? How do you build on that? One of the things we found was that kids were very engaged, actually, at the very beginning. And then that sort of tapered off as there was a bit of screen fatigue and that sort of thing. But they were more engaged, actually, with the online environment from the beginning than they were sometimes in the classrooms. So, how can we how can we use that engagement? How can we maintain it? And how can we, continue in that space?
Good stuff. Good advice. And Beth, over to you.
Yeah, leading on from that connection, I'd say communication, definitely. So like during lessons, you want to be using your facial expressions, your gestures, your eye contact, anything like that to communicate efficiently during a lesson, but between lessons as well. Even if you're like, just check in with them. If you haven't heard from a student in a while, check in with them, see how they're doing, make sure it's nothing, make sure that if you can help, you can help. Let them know you're there for them. I don't know, checking in with how they're getting on with a task you've set them, or even if you've just read something interesting online or something to do with the topic that you've been studying, just send them it across and say, hey, I read this recently and it was interesting.
So that kind of ongoing flow of communication, without all the kind of packet loss in between. Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you. And Jar Jar, what would you say?
I would say that, first of all, be yourself. So technology is only a tool for us to deliver the lesson, but just be ourselves as teachers. That I think would be very important, and also connect with your children, with the students, by checking on them, looking at their facial expression, maybe even discuss about newly found knowledge between the teacher and student, share it with them. So that would overcome a lot by not being with them physically.
Sure. That's great advice, and thank you.
I honestly think know your platform. The platform that you're using, you want to make sure you know what the tools are available and what how they're going to work best for you in delivering and engaging a class. Yeah, that's first. Anyway. All you listeners out there, thank you very much for tuning in. Thoroughly, I can only speak for myself, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the whole experience, listening to other people and their ideas. Thank you very much. And I know Rob's had a few difficulties with YouTube and everything, but he's been a brilliant host. He's put me at ease, and I'm sure everyone agrees with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, guys. Thank you. And
thanks, Rob.
yeah, and if you, just thanks to everybody out there who've joined us today. Brilliant. See you soon, guys.